Hey everyone, welcome back. We're diving into something today that's really important to me personally. And I know it's something a lot of people care about, and that is how we care for vulnerable groups, especially with everything moving more and more online.
Definitely.
We hear these terms like digital divide all the time, but it can
Mm.
be hard to grasp what that really means for people in their daily lives? So today we're going to really try to get into those real world impacts.
Yeah, it's not enough to just understand the challenges, right? We need to figure out how we build a system, a society that's inclusive and equitable no matter people's circumstances.
Exactly, exactly. And one of the things that really stood out to me in the research we did was how we need to broaden how we even define vulnerable groups in the first place.
Hmm.
It's not always the first groups that might
Mm.
come to mind. We're talking about folks like people coming out of incarceration, people facing poverty, marginalized communities dealing with multiple hurdles. So what does that mean when we're trying to lend a hand? What are the implications of this kind of broader perspective?
You've hit on a really important point because oftentimes these groups are facing interconnected challenges.
Yeah.
Let's take the example of someone who's recently been released from prison. They're already trying to find their footing, looking for housing.
Right.
And then on top of that, they might lack those digital literacy skills that are just essential in today's job market. Trying to apply for a job or even just find an apartment becomes incredibly difficult. It turns into this really difficult cycle to break.
Each obstacle makes the next one even harder.
Exactly.
Yeah, and it makes you realize how important it is to move past those kind of limited views of who's vulnerable. And that makes me think about something else that really stuck with me from the research. Sometimes, even when we're trying to do good, our help isn't actually all that helpful. It's like I remember volunteering at a food bank, and we had tons of canned fruit cocktail, but not a lot of low sodium options for people with dietary needs, or like donating food to seniors who might not be able to cook a complicated meal.
Absolutely. You've just illustrated it perfectly. We have to understand the specific needs of a community if we want to help. A one-size-fits-all approach just doesn't work.
Definitely not.
And this is even more important in our digital world, right? If we assume everyone has equal access to tech, or even just the skills to use it, then our solutions won't work, even if they come from a good place.
Totally. It's like thinking of the internet as this giant library. So much opportunity, but not everyone can even get through the door, let alone read the books.
Right.
And since we're on the topic of the digital world, our research really went deep on the challenges vulnerable groups face, specifically because of tech. What were some of the biggest roadblocks you noticed?
It seems like the challenges really fall into three main categories. First, there's the digital divide itself. So a lack of access to devices, dependable internet, you
Hmm.
know, even just the basic digital skills to navigate online spaces. Imagine trying to apply for a job online if you've never used a computer before,
Right,
you know.
right.
Then you have information inequality. Even if you have internet access,
Hmm.
just being flowed with information or not knowing how to figure out what's true, what's trustworthy,
It can be totally overwhelming.
it is, especially if you're dealing with other challenges in your life on top of that.
Yeah.
And then finally, we can't forget economic exclusion. As more and more jobs require us to have digital skills, and our research found it's almost 80%, those who don't have them fall even further behind.
80% is huge. That just really highlights how critical this whole issue is.
It really is.
Yeah, it's easy to feel overwhelmed by just how big these problems are, but one thing our research pointed to was the importance of education. And not just in the usual way, like giving students, and all of us really, a chance to interact with and learn from vulnerable groups. Not from a place of pity, but to build real understanding and empathy. So how do we turn knowing about these issues into action? How do we go from awareness to meaningful change?
Well, I think it starts by recognizing that real inclusion needs a systemic response, not just individual acts of generosity. Volunteering our time and donating to good causes, that's fantastic. But we need to be pushing for bigger solutions too, advocating for policies that close that digital divide, things like affordable internet programs,
Right.
and supporting those organizations that provide digital literacy training and that tailor that training to people's needs, because not everyone learns the same way. We have to make sure the resources are accessible and engaging.
Absolutely, making sure everyone has a fair shot. Well, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a question to think about. In a world where technology is more and more essential every day, what's our responsibility in making sure everyone can participate and benefit, not just survive, but thrive? What can you do in your own community to be a part of the solution? There are so many incredible organizations out there doing really important work, and even small actions can have a big impact.